Thanks, Lois. I guess it's me next. Okay. I had a lot of things that I wanted to say, so I'm going to start with the first one that comes to mind. And so how has my practice changed? I think I'll start a little bit with the context of the pandemic in India, and maybe people have seen in the news what's been happening in India. Of course, there are many of my friends and people I recognize in this meeting, in this panel. So you know what the situation has been, but it's not been easy. It's not been pleasant. The government has really let everyone down in many ways. The public health system has failed, so much so that over the last few months, people have been, dying, waiting for healthcare. So in the waiting rooms of hospitals, unable to access healthcare. They've been, and I think everyone I know and many others have had a direct kind of brush with COVID. Some have had losses. So that's on one side. So the pandemic has really taken a very, very significant toll in India. The second aspect is that the arts world is not a very well, resourced place. We don't have a lot of infrastructural support. Most artists are independent practitioners who, go from one gig to another and often have other stuff that they're doing to support them financially. So that changed too with the pandemic. There was very little opportunity to do anything that we did before, and there was simply a lot of stuff to deal with in terms of loss and grief and anxiety and all of this. So as an independent artist, I had completely lost a lot of the stuff that I had planned for last year, and it was just not possible. And with that kind of not doing much came this sense of anxiety of not being productive, not being engaged. And that kind of made me think about what does practice actually mean to me. And then I was reading this book. It's called The Bitch Doctrine by Laurie Penny. And something she said really made a lot of sense. I'm going to read it out here. It's about how it's about the relationship that women have to work, or how, particularly in women's lives, this work-life balance comes into play. So she says, if we put our careers first, we're selfish. If we devote ourselves to children and care work, we're lazy or spoiled. If we try to juggle both at once, we're unable to give either our full attention. The engine of capitalist patriarchy runs on the dirty fuel of women's shame. So whatever we choose, the important thing is that we blame ourselves. That way, we don't blame the system. So this kind of got me thinking about my own conditioning around capitalism and patriarchy. So this idea that not producing work is somehow being lazy, or, of course, I come within, the Indian context. I come from a very fortunate, I am very fortunate and come from a lot of privilege, which allows me to be an independent practitioner, in fact. So when I was not producing any work, there was this constant sense of, oh my God, I'm not doing anything. But, and the other side of that is the kind of patriarchal lens, which doesn't actually look at care work or the work that you do at home, or the work that I have two kids, the work that you do with family as work at all, or work around the home. And I think one of the things that Lois was talking about, which is using the architecture of familiar domestic spaces, kind of resonates a little bit with what I'm talking about, which is the sense of being that you have with family, or within your home, or within places that you live in. And can that somehow come together with this idea of work, so that we're not separating productive work and non-productive, so-called reproductive work. And I think I began to kind of explore how these two things came together. And I understand that for a lot of people, the work that they do cannot include, the non-work lives that they lead. But for me, trying to bring those two together and not have such clear boundaries between work and non-work helped me kind of stabilize my own sense of identity, because that was something that was shifting so much. Was I even an artist? Was I a performer? Or, I mean, I definitely felt much more like, a parent. That was much more an identity that was real and present to me, as a partner, as in our family structure, I was kind of the floater, the person who didn't have a lot of defined stuff to do, but anytime there was a crisis, I could step in and, help doing whatever needed to be done. So that was definitely the role that I found myself in a lot last year. And I also chose to do that. Coming to the kind of idea of liveness or connection, which all of us missed a lot, especially people who work in the theater. My attention didn't kind of go towards Zoom and the digital space, but instead went to other spaces that I very much enjoy being in, and connecting, feeling a sense of connection, perhaps not with other people, but with landscapes and other living and non-living things that we share the planet with, which actually, this gave me an opportunity to kind of enjoy that and begin to create some artwork out of that. So it is performative in some ways. It also prioritizes kind of slowness and rest and repetition. So I'm going to share with you now a film that I have been making with a very talented filmmaker who's also here on this call, Manish John. He's also a friend, and we shot this together. And yeah, I'd like to just share that with you. And I have two little excerpts that I'd like to share. So here we go. I'm going to try and screen share. I'd encourage everyone to go to the top right-hand corner of your screen and click and make your screen full screen. And also you can minimize the band that has all the faces so that you can watch the video as large as possible. Okay, I'm going to try this. I'm going to move to another section, so just bear with me a moment.
Shabari, are you playing it? Because we're not seeing it or hearing it.
But it's moving. Somebody moving in this down.
Yeah, there's
Should
a
we be
small...
hearing
slow.
anything?
No, there's no sound.
No,
Ah, sorry.
no, it's very slow.
It's very slow and
Helen.
very subtle. Sorry.
Sorry, I just because I didn't hear anything and I couldn't
Yeah,
see.
it's supposed to calm you down, Helen.
You might notice that I've started walking up the hill again. So I'm gonna stop the film here. Yeah, it is very slow. And I think especially if you're watching it on a phone, you may not actually see because it's a really vast kind of landscape. I just, before I end, I wanted to kind of recap that for me, the ideas of rest, repetition, and slowness became important. The ideas of liveness, that is not trying to kind of recreate a liveness that we feel in theater and performance, or kind of in-person theater and performance, not trying to recreate that or find ways of kind of achieving that or uh, in a Zoom space, but trying to find that in other spaces that I might otherwise have, ignored or walked quickly by, but trying to find that sense of liveness, connection, and the kind of presence and the moment. That these are the things that we all kind of treasure in. In performance. I'm getting a bit distracted by the chat, sorry. But these are things that we can also find in other spaces. And to me, that was something that really shifted. So this is I think the third film project that I'm working on. And so my work has shifted quite away from, the rehearsal room and a theater and, all of that stuff, but more into this kind of stuff, into film of this nature. I'll stop there. Thank you all.